Ali Farka Touré was a musician from Mali, particularly a guitarist, but he did play other things as well. So normally what I do is I record these short introductions for the act, and then I can reuse them if I've got albums, more than one album by the same act. And in this case, I'm afraid Short isn't going to quite cut it because his life has been far too interesting. So first of all, Farka is his nickname, and it means donkey. Okay. Now, in his early years, he was he grew up in Mali, obviously, and they have certainly in the culture that he was part of, there was a caste system, and it was too high a caste to be a musician, but he obviously went against that. He secretly, in his youth, made a one-stringed instrument and would play it along with some of his friends. Alongside other jobs that he had as he was getting a little bit older, he was a chauffeur and an ambulance boatman. I love the idea of an ambulance boatman. He had an experience at a performance of the National Ballet of Guinea in 1956 when the part of the accompaniment was on the guitar, and he fell in love with the guitar at this point. He then started going to musical competitions. He learnt to sing in 7 different languages and did rather well in these competitions, to the extent that eventually he had a trip to Bulgaria, of all places, to represent Mali. And whilst he was there, he heard blues and he bought a guitar, and he particularly liked the music of John Lee Hooker. He got a job at Radio Mali, which allowed him to use their recording studio, which at the time was the only one in Mali. And he started sending tapes to French labels and consequently got a deal and started releasing records through the French labels. British DJ Andy Kershaw picked up a copy of one of his albums whilst he was on a trip to Paris to try and find music that wasn't available in Britain, and started playing some of his tracks on Radio 1, and there was a huge positive reaction. And his career basically picked up at that point from there. He's recorded with bluesmen and with folk people and with all sorts of things. He's recorded in France and in Britain. He did some recording in Hollywood, but he said he didn't like it. He didn't like the feel of the place. He had a kind of, a way with words. He said America was like a spiritual car park, and he resisted attempts to categorize him as a blues player, saying that blues was like soap powder. He became eventually mayor of the town that he grew up in, and he spent some of his own money on doing up the roads, getting some sewers dug, and buying a generator to supply electricity for the town. He released somewhere around the order of 20 albums. Some of those were after his death in 2006. Hi, my name's Dan. So this was the 19th, I think, and final studio album by Ali Farka Touré, and it was released 3 months after his death. He had approved the mastering of it before he died. And I think, I'm actually pretty sure, this is the first listen that I've had of this album, so my first encounter of it. So in order to describe this, I'm going to describe it a bit like a recipe. So take half a pound of blues and make sure some of that is proper old-fashioned Delta blues. I'm referencing here Robert Johnson, but also John Lee Hooker. And take about 1 pound of West African traditional music, put them both in a pot and mix them up with a great big spoon until there's lots of different blends going on in there. And that's basically what this is. It's a mixture of blues and Malian traditional music. And and various bits, and it's not like one and then the other. It's all kind of blended in together. Some tracks I'd say were more blues based. Some tracks I'd say were more traditional based. Some of them are quite easily identifiable as one or the other. But even then, the instruments that are used are a mixture of these instruments between. So they've got traditional African instruments, particularly if I can pronounce it right, ngoni, but others as well. But also guitars and percussion, drums, bass, harmonica quite significantly, and even a bit of saxophone in here as well. The singing is in languages I don't understand. Occasionally it's in French, so I can recognise it as being French. I have no idea what the other languages are. Do I like it? Well, yes. So I like blues. It's quite a big category with all sorts of different things going on. I like pretty much every style of blues that I've come across. I like African traditional music. Again, that's quite a broad spectrum of things. But I've heard kind of North and West African stuff possibly more than others. Yeah, I'm not sure that's actually true. But so it's got two things that I like. I don't object to this blending of the two things. So yeah, I like it. It's quite a good album, and it was just pleasant listening for me. So what do you think? Please talk to me through the comments box. That's it from me for now.
J'ai trouvé le métro n'est pas un petit boulot. Mais je suis un